Hey, good day to you. This is Todd. I am a regular dude walking in the Word. Hey, we're going through Genesis right now, and we're talking. Most of the end of the book of Genesis is about Joseph. Okay, we do stop in this one chapter, and it talks about Judah and his relationship with Tamar, his son's wife. Okay, and how it's kind of a crazy story, kind of a thing you'd hear on Jerry Springer, but it's here in the Bible. Okay, so we talked about it yesterday about I want the pleasure without the commitment. All right, today it's entitled "She is More Righteous Than I," and this is taken from Genesis 38, verses 11 through 30. So let's read here. Okay. It says this: Judah then said to his daughter-in-law, Tamar, "Live as a widow in your father's household until my son Shelah grows up, for he thought he may die too, just like his brothers." So Tamar went to live in her father's household. Okay, so Judah is thinking, it's all because of Tamar that my sons are dying, all right? Not thinking, my sons are wicked and the Lord has killed them. Okay, so Judah is here in La La Land or something, not noticing how wicked his sons are and how the Lord is displeased with that. And he thinks, oh, it's because of Tamar. And so he sends her away to her father's house. And keep this in mind, back in that day, when you were married to that person and then when that husband died, you were like destitute. Okay, you had nothing. Okay, so and technically she should have been, the third son should have been in line to take care of her. Okay, but she's not. So Judah says, "Hey, go back to your father's house and live with your parents, and they can take care of you." All right. So verse 12. After a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. Again, we don't know her name. She's just a Canaanite woman here. When Judah had recovered from his grief, he went up to Timnah to the men who were shearing his sheep, and his friend Hera the Adulamite went with him. Okay, the sheep shearing was kind of a festival. Yeah, I mean, it was the work to shear the sheep, but it was really a harvest. All right, so you spent all this time raising the sheep, and then you sheared the sheep and got all this money, and goods for the sheep, for the wool. And so they were like, oh, let's have a beer or whatever. So that's what happened here. Verse 13. When Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is on his way to Timnah to shear sheep," she took off her widow's clothes, covered herself in a veil to disguise herself, and then sat down at the entrance to Enam, which is on the road to Timnah, for she saw that though Selah was now grown up, she had not been given to him as a wife. Okay, she put two and two together. She was like, the guy's old enough to be my wife, and he's still not. And so she knew this wasn't going to happen here. All right, and she covered herself, and this would be a common practice. They did that as a prostitute. And the prostitute did that really as like a wedding garment, dressed up like that. And you remember Jacob had that issue when he had his wives too. It was obvious they were covered up, and it wasn't until morning he realized, this isn't the woman I thought I married. All right, so she's all covered. Verse 15. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. Not realizing that she was his daughter-in-law, he went over to her by the roadside and said, "Come now, let me sleep with you." All right, so he's propositioning her like a prostitute here. And what will you give me to sleep with you, she asked. And knowing he didn't carry money around, guys back then did not carry money around because it could easily be stolen from him. And so he goes, "I'll send you a young goat from my flock," he said. And then, "Will you give me something as a pledge until you send it?" she asked. He said, "What pledge should I give you?" "Your seal and its cord and the staff in your hand," she answered. So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. After she left She took off her veil and put the widow's clothes back on again. Meanwhile, Judah sent the young goat by his friend to the Adulamite in order to get the pledge back from the woman. But he did not find her. He asked the men who lived there, "Where is that shrine prostitute who was beside the road in Enam?" "There hasn't been any shrine prostitute here," they said. So he went back to Judah and said, "I didn't find her. Besides, the men who lived there said there hasn't been a shrine prostitute here." Then Judah said, "Let's keep what she has, or we will become a laughingstock. After all, I did send her to this young goat, but you didn't find her." Okay, so Judah sends the goat. He didn't want it to look like he had propositioned a prostitute by carrying this goat around, and people like, "Hey, why are you carrying that goat around?" Okay, so he sent the friend to do the dirty work here, and the friend can't find the woman, and well, because wasn't ever really a prostitute here. Okay, and notice she had the core. She had his seal, which would probably be most likely be a ring, which would have been used to like stamp legal documents and with wax. Okay, so she had that, and she had its cord, and then she had the staff. Okay, so the staff was used for his work. Okay, just like if I was a carpenter and I had a hammer, she would have taken my hammer. Okay, so it was obvious, she had the things that would identify him. Okay, but they didn't find it, and so Judah's like, let's just forget about it. We tried to find her, and if we start asking around, we're going to be just laughed out of town here. Verse 24, about 3 months later, Judah was told, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar is guilty of prostitution, and as a result she is now pregnant." Judah said, "Bring her out and have her burned to death." Okay, he's probably thinking like now, well, I mean, he was acting all high and righteous here, like, I would never do such a thing, and she should have been, saving herself for my third son, and so, but she's acting like a prostitute here, so she deserves to be burned up here. So anyway, that's what he says. Bring her out here and have her burned to death. All right. Verse 25, as she was being brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law. "I am pregnant by the man who owns these," she said. And she added, "See if you recognize whose seal and cord and the staff these are." She knew good and well whose it was. All right. Verse 26, Judah recognized them and said, "She is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Shelah." And he did not sleep with her again. All right. The key phrase from today's episode is, "She is more righteous than I." He was all, about like, oh, yeah, she's guilty of prostitution. We got to get rid of her. And completely forgetting about himself. All right. And forgetting about the deception he was doing about saying, "Oh, yeah, I'll save you for my third son." And that wasn't going to happen. And she, used her sexual power, really. Used her sex to get a son so that the name would be carried on and she would be taken care of. All right? Because he had no intention of taking care of her. All right, verse 27. When the time came for her to give birth, there were 2 twin boys in the womb. As she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand, so the midwife took the scarlet thread and tied it on his wrist and said, "This one came out first." But when he drew back his hand, his brother came out, and she said, "This is how you have broken out." And he was named Perez. Then his brother, who had the scarlet thread on his wrist, came out, and he was named Zerah. Okay? So, several things here as we conclude here today. The big thing is Judah noticed, and he realizes at the end, she is more righteous than I. He was acting like he's all righteous and everything. Oh, we got to get rid of the prostitute. Yet he was the one that impregnated her, okay, and had no intention of actually taking care of her. So then he admits to himself, you know what, she was more righteous than I. I should have been the one taking care of her here. So that's one thing. We're all guilty of that stuff, okay? We act like we're all righteous and, I would never do such a thing, and we do those things, sometimes worse, okay? So don't act like you're all high and mighty. and like pointing out the other sins. Oh, I would never do that. And we sure do that. Okay. The other thing here is this. Why does it give such, it gives a whole chapter talking about Tamar, all right? Why? Let me tell you why. Because Tamar is one of the women that are mentioned. There's only 4 women mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus, okay? And Judah was, the line of Jesus was going to come from Judah, okay? And the kings also, David, Solomon, and so forth, was also to come from Judah, okay? So you had Tamar was one of the women. You had Rahab, who we'll see in Exodus, and you had Ruth, who was a Moabite. All 3 of those women, get this, were Gentiles, okay? We're not Jewish women, but we're kind of grafted in, if you look at it that way. And then the last one is Mary, okay? So only 4 women mentioned in the genealogy, and Tamar is one of them, okay? So it shows how God has redemption and will bring someone in to the fold here, all right? And how all this relates to, and remember, all this stuff points to Jesus in the Bible, okay? So remember that today. Thanks for watching. I'm a regular dude walking in the Word, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we continue our journey through Genesis. Lord's blessing. I'll see you then.